Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 789. I had the white pieces and started off with e4, and my opponent went c5, the Sicilian defense. And after a few moves, we get into a classical Sicilian, although he gets to it by an interesting route. So he plays knight c6 first, which is often used to introduce the Sveshnikov. I go for d4, which is the open Sicilian, and take. And then he goes knight f6. The Kalashnikov is e5 right away. He could pull that here. There's also d6 and e6, but he goes knight f6, and can't push the pawn forward at this point, so defending is the normal move, usually with the knight. And now we can see here that once again e5 is available to play the Sveshnikov, or he could go with e6, transpose into a Taimanov Sicilian, but he goes with d6, so we're into a classical Sicilian, which normally you get to by playing d6 on like the third move, but it's the same position. So there's different ways for white to respond here. This position has been seen many times, of course. Bishop e2 is kind of the positional way to play it. Bishop c4 and bishop to g5 are the more attacking moves, and bishop g5, the Rauzer attack, is the top choice here. Back goes e6 usually to be able to take back with the queen at this point if white chooses to exchange. So normally white just defends the pawn, and defends the bishop. You always have to be careful about ideas like knight takes e4 hitting the queen. So at each move you want to check and see if that tactic is going to work for black, but it doesn't do anything here. The bishop is defended, so the knight can just be taken. And even after bishop e7, that's the case. Let's see, a6 is the top choice, but bishop, did I look at the a6? No, I didn't really look at that. So bishop e7 is a fine way to play. And then castling queenside. So I was already a little bit outside my knowledge, but it looks like I was finding the right moves here. They're very typical Sicilian moves anyway. And here he went a6, which is a bit unusual. I think here's where I started looking. No, okay, we continued. It's still kind of a position, a playable position. Then I go f4. This cements the bishop in over here. And so now I don't have to worry so much about the funny tactics on the e4 pawn. And I can bring my knight back and then over around to the king side. So that's one of the ideas, is to push the f-pawn forward before this knight gets traded off, and give it a square back here. So the knight got moved out of the way of the f-pawn went forward, and now the knight can come back. He played h6 here, and so h6 is actually a bit of a mistake. Yeah, so this is where I looked at some of the other lines here. Maybe the simplest way to play is just to take the knight off here, and this was one of the top choices of the chess engine as well for black. And then he can castle here. Yeah, the chess engine liked castling. You also go b5 for the attack, but the chess engine preferred castling. And then after bishop e2, then b5, going for the classical attack, counterattack against the king over here. And it's a game. All that is fine. Let's see. One interesting possibility here is that, let's see, after these exchanges, instead of playing bishop e2, if I take, and he takes back with the bishop, and I take on d6. This is actually not considered very good for white, even though white has won a pawn. Queen comes out to a5. This rook is coming over to d8 to chase the queen away, and so let's see. I'm not even sure what my next move is. Maybe I have to drop the queen all the way back here to safety. Anyway, in exchange for the lost pawn. And I guess the pawn he's missing is a c-pawn. I've got a c-pawn and he doesn't. So he's lost a c-pawn. But black has the bishop pair, an active queen, and he's going to be able to play with b5 and bishop to b7. So anyway, it seems like this is an even position for black. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. Let's see. Another way to play it is with this bishop d7 move. And after knight f3, then the knight just drops back, b5, going for the counterattack. And then after this exchange, it's normal to take back with the pawn and get this kind of pawn structure. I've been in this kind of situation with black before because I play the classical Sicilian. It seems to be a defensible position, but it's a bit difficult to play. I've found these pawns often come under fire, and of course there's no safe place for black to castle. But of course black has counterattacking ideas and open files for his rooks. So anyway, it's a position where white only has a slight edge, so should be playable for black. So the point, I guess, back here is that when black plays h6, he's forcing me to make a decision with the bishop, and in a lot of those lines I just want to take the knight anyway, and so here I'm taking it after black has wasted the tempo basically with h6. So I've kind of gained something a little bit here, and I have some kind of edge. And now the chess engine wants me to just trade off the knight and take with the bishop. And in this position, then it took me a while to figure this out. In this position, I'm a pawn up, and but I'm much better. Whereas in this position here, the other line, I was a pawn up, but I was much worse, or even. So here, black has compensation for the pawn, and here he doesn't. So what's the difference between these two positions? Well, one is a question of time. So in both cases, it's black's turn to move. But he can't castle right away in this position. He might have to go for the trade. And if he goes for the trade, then he's got another weakness here on c6 that I can attack, and I am a pawn up to start with. So that would be fine for white. And if he runs away with queen to a5, he's still not castling. It takes him a couple of moves to get castled. So I think that's the main difference. I mean, there is this difference that the pawn has been moved from b7 to c6. But the other difference is that here, black has already castled. He can play queen a5 right away and gain another tempo by bringing the rook over to chase my queen away. So anyway, these little differences make a big difference in the game. So it's not like this pawn on d6 is always a mistake to take. You just have to take it under the right circumstances when black isn't getting that kind of counterplay. Anyway, I didn't think about that. I just was following this other plan of bringing the knight back to f3 and continuing with a king side attack. He castled. I played king b1. I think this is a good choice here. There are times, like I said, the queen often comes out here, and then the knight may be threatening, or maybe there's a sacrifice on c3. And in those cases, you want to have that extra defender for the a-pawn, and sometimes you need the c1 square to bring a rook over to defend that c-pawn if it gets under pressure along the c-file. So king b1 is often a good preparatory move before launching onto an attack. And here, queen c7 seems to be a slight mistake. The chess engine prefers, once again, going like this, queen a5. And now, actually, it's not safe to take the pawn. Right here, if I take the pawn, he has rook d8 immediately, and my queen is trapped. So always watch out for little things like that. So it's an opportunity for black to get in that queen a5 move. Anyway, he was holding on to the pawn this way, where I actually could just take the pawn for some slight edge, because now I can trade off to the queen. So I could have grabbed that pawn here. Let's see, but I went g4. I was interested in the king side attack, and he went rook d8. And now I think I have a pretty good edge here. Yeah, for the next few moves. So I've got kind of a winning attack on the side here. I just, on move 18, I give an edge away. But so instead of rook d8, he really needed to not worry so much about that pawn, and instead go for a counterplay against my king on the queen side over here. And that's how black should play to stay in the game. So rook d8, and now I have a kind of a winning edge with this attack. g5, he takes. I take, drives the bishop back. It would have been a little better to trade here and get my queen off this diagonal, but he dropped back this way. Let's see, and I push forward with the h-pawn. So this is all winning for white. He tried d5. I took. He took. And the winning continuation here is knight takes d5, which to me is actually a little bit counterintuitive, you know, putting your knight in that pin, but it's all about the details. When your knight goes there, it's also hitting the queen. So there's a threat after knight takes pawn of just knight takes queen, and even if rook takes queen, I can take the rook, and my knight isn't hanging, so that just wins a whole rook. So his queen has to move. And if his queen runs out here, as we saw in those other lines, then I can trade queens, which drags his knight away from defense of the rook, and then I can take the bishop with check and just win the rook on the back rank. So that is just winning loads of material. Let's see, if the queen runs out here to g3, then just knight takes e7 check. And if he moves the king, I can take the knight, that just wins a piece. Or if he takes my knight, I take the rook. So that also wins material. So to avoid any immediate material loss, he has to go queen d7, and then I can just keep developing, and I have really just an overwhelming attack here. So anyway, I've won a pawn, a good big center pawn. There's no longer any pin here because my queen is adequately defended, so this knight is really free to move, and I just have lots of attacking ideas against his king with the advanced pawns. So anyway, a winning attack for white there. But anyway, like I said, it's a little bit counterintuitive to to pin your knight that way. Anyway, I played knight to d4, and so after this, black is back in the game. So there's this exchange. Plays bishop c5, hitting my queen. I drop back. Plays bishop e6, holding on to his center. Play h5. I'm still continuing the attack. I mean, you know, white still has the attack. It's just that with good play, black can still defend here. And here's where he makes his mistake. He plays d4. I think this is the fatal mistake of black. He could have played bishop b4, going after the knight here. And well, I mean, there's a threat of pushing that pawn and attacking the pinned knight, so I can unpin and block the pawn by playing queen d4. But he can, you know, trade off, and you know, either take with a pawn, or if I take with the queen, he trades queens. You know, maybe I have some slight edge after that. What's the pawn count? No, it's really not too far from even if he plays this correctly. So so anyway, this is his big mistake, this d4 move, chasing my knight away. But you know, my knight is got a good square here on e4, getting closer to the king side, and I think I'm just winning from this point forward. Let's see, he went bishop back to b6. He'd want to save his bishop, and I push on with h6. Goes king h7. Maybe the best defense here was bishop f5. But you see this, well, I at least win a pawn here with this sequence. Rook e1, defending the knight, and d3. He pitches the pawn. Bishop takes d3 and g6. And so now, knight here, I get my knight to f6 check. This is something I was looking at during the game, but he has control over this diagonal, so I can't easily put my queen out here and threaten a mate. But anyway, white is still much better. White has won a pawn, and black's king is all confined here, so I should probably win this game too, but that was his best hope of a defense. Anyway, after king h7, it wins pretty quickly. The fastest win here is pawn to g6 check. And what this does, it opens this diagonal with tempo. It's a very nice move. Let's see, he takes the pawn. He really doesn't have much better. And then I take here with check. He takes, and then now my queen can hop into h6. And he's going to get mated in short order. His king can't escape here. So that's the quickest win. Let's see, I took with check, and he took with his king, and yeah, I just didn't have that idea of pushing the g-pawn forward. Normally I bring the queen to h2 in these kind of attacks and just mate on the h-file, but his queen is guarding that square. So let's see. I tried bishop d3 here, preventing him from pushing this pawn forward. This is still a winning attack here, by the way. It's all just winning. It's just not the fastest win. Let's see. He went bishop f5 here. I went rook d to e1. Once again, h6. h6 is the winning idea. And if he takes with the queen, if he takes with the bishop, then I come in with the queen. So another winning idea there. Let's see. I played rook d to e1. And he goes bishop to a5. So I kind of walked into this skewer that I hadn't seen coming, but it turns out I'm still just winning with this move, queen f2, which is the best move in the position. And yeah, I've still got a winning attack. He went ahead and took the rook. There was really nothing better. And after queen takes f5, he tried queen to c6, defending along the third rank. So anyway, there's a very quick finish here. So can you find the fastest way to end the game at this point? Here's your little tactics quiz for this video. So yeah, I hope you spotted this idea. I don't know why I didn't spot it. I guess the point was his queen c6 move left off defense of the f7 pawn. So just rook h7 followed by queen takes f7 mate is a mate in two. And I even played the first mate, the first part of it, but he went king g8 here. And I brought my knight in so that I couldn't take the f-pawn with my queen. So anyway, we got this long chase where I keep this winning edge the whole time. In fact, I think it's still a mate the whole way, but but there was quicker mates. Let's see, and there's probably quicker mates along here too. But anyway, there was one more interesting. Yeah, I had a mate in one here. There's a second mate in one that I missed by going there. But this was a mate in two, queen d3 check. The only thing you have to avoid in a position like this is playing a move like queen to c3 and then losing your queen to the bishop, which is the kind of thing I've done before. But anyway, queen d3 check, he blocked with the bishop. And I took, and that was the mate. So anyway, it was an interesting king hunt, although it was an unnecessary king hunt since I had a mate in two. But anyway, it was a fun game. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you again soon.